Okay, thanks very much. At last, we start the session on immersive television. My name is William Cooper, and I run Inform ITV, which is a consultancy that has specialized for the last decade or more on the intersection between the internet and television, or broadband meets broadcast, as I sometimes call it. And I'm very much focused on the consumer perspective in all of this, the viewer position. But I do have an understanding of the technology and operations and strategy and so on. We work with a number of companies, some of them in the room here, looking at really the future of television and where things are going. And one of the key things that we're looking at is what is the future of television in terms of improving quality, and something that we really want to talk about today. It's called in the program Immersive Television. That's something maybe we can unpick a little bit, whether what we're talking about is really immersive. But I think it's about quality in every dimension. And there are a number of technology trends that are coming together to really improve and enhance that viewing experience. And obviously, television itself is under threat and challenge from many directions. And one of the things that I think will really bring television back into a central place is when we see some step changes in terms of the quality that can be delivered. And one of the arguments that I have at the moment is that television isn't actually very good at the moment in terms of its technical quality, and we need to be really careful about some of the things that could be happening, about not being left behind, because there are some people that are perhaps better placed to deliver some of these services than some of the people, the usual suspects that have been delivering television and video to date. So it's a very dynamic environment, and I think things are moving more quickly, particularly in the field of UHD, than some pundits perhaps predicted a few years ago. So our session today is looking at immersive television, principally UHD, and we're going to start off with a session that looks at what consumers want from UHD. We're going to be hearing from Claudia Vaccaroni from Eutelsat, who's done some consumer research in this area.
Thank you, William, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here and share this piece of research with you. Eutelsat, for those of you who might not know, is one of the leading world satellite operators. We have a fleet with 40 satellites covering over 80 countries and carrying 6,000 channels. Ultra HD for us is obviously a very big topic, and let me give you a little bit of the information, if this works. The clicker seems to be stuck. Okay, all right, like this. So as I was saying, Ultra HD is obviously a big area of focus for us in terms of development, both from the technological standpoint and from the business opportunity standpoint. So a little bit of genesis in terms of this piece of research. In the last couple of years, when Ultra HD has started to pick up momentum and being much talked about, we've been seeing a lot of speculations in terms of the number of TV channels that are going to be launched and the number of TV screens that are going to be sold, but nobody was really talking to the consumer and witnessing and checking whether they really want it and whether they like it, and they realize, whether that's the quality that they really want. So that's where we decided to intervene. Or a little bit fast, intervene and started this project. So we started this qualitative market research, which was carried between 2014 and 2015 in 7 different TV markets. We started with the UK, France, Germany, and Italy, and then in 2015 we redid also Poland and expanded to Russia and to Turkey as well. We did focus groups of 2 hours each, more or less, and 8 to 10 participants. And in each city, we separated, 2 groups, one with pay TV viewers and the other one with people that normally just receive free-to-view television. And that's because they tend to have already at the basis a different type of engagement and relationship with their television. We worked with Market Research TNS, which administered the focus groups, and we partnered with Samsung, who put at disposal some beautiful Ultra HD 55 inches curved screens for the exercise. One key element to be kept in mind is that the consumers invited to these focus groups, they did not know that they were going to be exposed to a television, to an Ultra HD experience. They were just invited to make a new television experience, but they had no idea, nor in the invite, nor until upon arriving, they had no idea that they were going to witness Ultra HD. So it was a real unprompted experience, and we wanted to be able to capture it and seeing their immediate reactions. So the way the groups worked was that they would be arriving, they would be started talking about their current television equipment and experiences, and then at some point the moderator would be unveiling a screen, showing them some footage which was provided by Samsung. At the occasion it was one segment showcasing firemen in action, so a very detailed scene with a lot of drama and a lot of beautiful colors, fires, water droplets. And then another scene, another footage, which was more in the like of documentaries, showcasing nature. I think it was like some landscapes and some natural documentaries on Finland. So two different type of contents. What were the objectives for this study? Well, first we wanted to test the consumer awareness of Ultra HD. We wanted to understand if they already knew about it, if they heard about it, is it on their radar or not, as a technology, as a TV experience. We wanted to test their appreciation for the image quality. Do they see any difference compared to what they experience today at home? We wanted to see whether the experience was appealing for them, and then in which case how to address the viewers potentially with in terms of marketing and messaging. And then finally, testing their investment expectations and see if there's any difference between the pay TV viewers and the free TV viewers segments. So key findings. First, okay, the animations are all going by themselves, so I apologize. I'm not controlling this very well, but I'll just put it all up there. First, across all markets and across all the segments, a very low unprompted awareness. So this was November 2013, and the last groups, they were held in July 2015. It's not that long ago. At that time, and even in those markets, even in the more mature TV markets like the UK and Germany, still very low consumer awareness. People don't necessarily understand the technology and haven't really heard about it very much. Things might have changed in the meantime, but one of the things that we assessed at the time was that as an industry, there still has to be some significant communications to illustrate the benefits and to really create an appeal for this new format. However, as soon as they were exposed to the broadcast, to the footage, enthusiastic responses across all the board in every market and across all the segments. Everyone is absolutely in awe in front of this new experience. They realize right away, which is something new, which they haven't seen before, which is dramatically different from what they have at home. And so there's this recognition of a thrilling, new, and intriguing TV experience. They talk about superior image quality. They really, recognize the superiority of the current experience that they have at home. They talked about a strong immersion experience. William, you were talking about whether immersive is the correct term or not. We tend to like it because it's something which is a little bit detached from the technology. As an industry, we try to, we have a tendency sometimes to really start from the technology and then, seeing, how we push it out there onto the consumers. But it's really about the experience. And for them, there's really a sense of immersion. They talk about feeling like being there, comparing it a lot to 3D, but without the uncomfort of the glasses, so something which is really drawing the consumer into the screen. They talked about the sharpness and the vivid colors, something that they really, really detect right away. They say again, something different from what they've had so far. And then also when the discussion went to all the different technologies and formats that are available today in terms of screens and equipment, well, they definitely recognize the superiority of Ultra HD to all the other formats that have been experienced by them so far. Here are some quotes and some verbatim from the groups. I'm not going to read them all, but it kind of shows also these consistencies. This really surprised us and encouraged us as well, because from across all these very different TV markets, there's the same consistent language coming out and the same consistent reactions. They say things like in Poland, I could sense the realism because it was possible to spot the tiny elements and the water dust and the burnt planks floating in the air. The fire, its color, it was like reality. In Italy, I felt like I was there. in Russia as if you're looking through a window and not the screen. So again, this sense of immersion, of being there. In the UK, it was a top quality picture, unbelievable new technology. So it's really something which is very consistent and this enthusiastic response. In terms of the genre expectations, so we asked them, what do you think would be the ideal content, suited for this type of format and quality? Well, not surprisingly, the three top genres that come to mind and are mentioned, it's movies and series, particularly action scenes and science fiction. And followed by sports and cultural events because of all the action and all the details that are to be caught. And then finally, last but not least, documentaries and animals and travels. And I think that we will be hearing later on from someone who's producing this type of content. Joe will tell us a little bit how Ultra HD is particularly suited for this type of content. So we then started probing on their willingness to invest. Because one of the things actually was kind of interesting in the exercise, at first, when they started seeing this, they attributed the quality experience just to the screen because consumers are not necessarily aware of the whole value chain. At first, they thought that it was a focus group about the screen, and so they started asking about the brand of the screen, and they, and attributed this experience exclusively to the screen. And then eventually, as the discussion evolved, and some of the more educated participants created clarity about the value chain, we could address also the willingness and the intention to invest, not only on the screen and on the technology, but also on the content. So in terms of the content on the hardware, it varies a little bit from market to market, but it was kind of interesting because the willingness to invest was very much matching the price points of the market at the time. We all know that the prices for the UHD screens have been falling dramatically, and they keep on falling, they keep on becoming more and more affordable. At the time, so up to July 2015, it was in a range between 1,000 to 4,000 euros for screens below 50 inches. There was an issue with the size, so we showed a screen that was 55 inches, which was unbelievably admired, but at the same time felt a little bit intimidating. So 50 inches seems to be the maximum screen size that could be reasonable to have in the home. In terms of content, I will show something a little bit later, more detailed, but in some markets, they expressed the willingness to pay for content up to 10 years on top of their current subscriptions. And this is true. And in terms of the format, there's a difference between the two segments and the two groups. So the pay TV viewers, those that are already subscribing to some sort of subscription, they would be ideally prone to a linear TV channel to be added to their current bundle. While the non-pay TV viewers, what's interesting is that for the first time, they feel prompted to pay to be able to enjoy this type of quality and this type of content. But at the same time, they don't feel yet, because of the lack of content and because of not being sure what they can see, they want to go gradually. And so they feel more reassured by a video on demand or pay-per-view format where they can just pay occasionally for specific pieces of content before eventually ramping up to a channel whenever that will be available. So we have that information broken down by country. Again, this is a very detailed slide. I'm not going to read it all, but there are obviously some peculiarities for each of the specific markets. Obviously, in very developed and mature TV markets, audiovisual markets like the UK and Germany, the price points are a little bit higher. Italy at the time was still very much sensitive and stricken by the crisis, and so the price points were a little bit lower. We have the peculiarity of Poland, where there's very little free television, and so the two groups, they were actually both among pay TV players. And then in Turkey, it's a market where video on demand is still not part of the scene, so they are more willing to, they were more interested in a linear channel offer rather than video on demand, for instance. But more or less, what was interesting as a takeaway globally was this, tipping point and this willingness to invest and willingness to pay to be able to enjoy this type of content and this type of experience. And then we went into another interesting exercise, which was, okay, if there was an operator pulling together an offer, what would be the ideal offer for you today? What would be the offer that would make you really engaged and invest? And again, I'm not going to read them all, but there's a few that I'd like to highlight. Because basically what came out of it and what we see is how consumers are starting to be influenced by some of the other offers that they have in their lives, and particularly like for telecom services. So while they realize that this type of quality requires a significant investment because of both the screen, the new technology that needs to be purchased, and then also new content that needs to be subscribed to, they're trying to be creative and came up with very interesting solutions. Like for instance, the one in Germany and Turkey, offer number 1, where a subscription to a UHD linear broadcast for 36 months would be coupled with a free 48 inches UHD screen in Turkey, or at least a cheaper one in Germany. So they're saying, okay, we can make we can make an effort, but meet us midway, basically. And the same way in for the Russian and Turkey, offer number 4, it would be the opposite. They would say, okay, if we purchase a 55 inches Ultra HD screen, then it would be nice to have free access to some sort of UHD content for a period of like 6 to 12 months. So this is something, again, it's something that brings the notion of finding a more acceptable costs, and for practicality, also avoiding having all these different contracts and different suppliers. Here are some other ones as well. If you're interested in having more details about this, I'll be happy to talk to you on one-on-one afterwards. Then we looked at also something interesting that we looked at in the last year was the screens market projection, and GfK has been monitoring this. So 2015 was a key incubator for Ultra HD screens. So at mid-year 2015, in an area which encompasses the top 21 TV markets in Europe and the Middle East, there were already 1.59 million TV screens sold. And these were projected to rise by 206% up to 4.85 million by Christmas 2015. We're currently checking if this really happened. I know that, for instance, in France, they realized the target. I don't know if you have any information regarding the UK market, but we're compiling this and we'll be communicating about this on MIP TV in a few weeks. But what's interesting is that, there's definitely, this past year has been a real incubator, and there is a real trend which is unstoppable that we'll see in 2018, 23.5 million, and then by 2020, basically, almost the majority of the TV screens in these markets will be Ultra HD enabled. This slide is just to kind of showcase how the satellite, in terms of the distribution of Ultra HD, satellite is still one of the most performing infrastructure compared to the terrestrial channels, for at least 3 out of the 4 criteria, which is the coverage, because of the ubiquitous intrinsic element of the satellite, the image quality, which is enabled by the bandwidth availability. So we are, definitely well placed to accompany this evolution. And as a satellite operator, we have been allocating specific capacities. If the clicker will help me. So we have 3 demo channels that have been put available for our clients or for broadcasters or content providers that want to start testing, the broadcasting of 4K content. We have 4K1, which is on our premium orbital position at 13 degrees east, which is already reaching 138 million TV homes in Europe, Africa, and Middle East. We also have a channel on Phi West A, which is on FranceSat, which is covering primarily France and North Africa. And then there's another one that wouldn't come up, which is also, we just recently announced a demo channel over Sub-Saharan Africa as well at the position 7 East. So these are, again, demo channels that are at disposal to the industry to start testing. And we also have key agreements with several content providers that have been announced and are coming up this year. on 4 different orbital positions and different markets. So SPI International, which is an international content producer, has this Funbox 4K channel, which is already available at the moment, broadcasting free-to-air on 4K1, basically on Hotbird. We have Digiturk, which is the main pay TV platforms in Turkey, which is just recently announced reserving some specific capacity to be able to launch their UHD services. In Russia, where we actually kind of dominate the market, we have the 3-color TV platform Ultra HD. They started testing, and the channel is supposed to be launched soon, as well as Insight TV. And then last week at Capset Dubai, we had OSN, which is the main pay TV platform in the Middle East, which also launched and announced new UHD services out of our position 7 and 8 West over the Middle East. So we are well placed to accompany our clients, and then we, as a satellite operator, we've been always at the forefront of new innovations. We're excited, about these new developments, and we look forward to this year with new exciting announcements as well. Thank you very much.
Do we have any questions for Claudia? Yes, we've got one there. Can we get a microphone to the front?
Just a clarification on the actual content that you're using for these, this survey, if you like. It was just 4K resolution content, no color, no enhanced frame rates or HDR technologies.
This was before the whole HDR issue that came up. So it was 2014 and July 2015. So it was content that was provided by Samsung. They had a demo pack, content that was shot in 4K and played out of their 4K latest models at the time. So it was the best available, in that particular time.
Just 4K content, not really UHD content that was actually provided this very positive reaction then.
Well, for us it was Ultra HD at the time. It was still the phase 1 type of content, and it still was enough to create that level of engagement and enthusiasm. We will probably repeat the exercise actually this summer, not in all of the 7 markets, but at least 3 out of those, and it will be interesting to see upgrading it now with HDR as well, and see what.
Interesting. Rerun the previous tests and see whether UHD, for instance, gives an additional sort of value proposition or something, perhaps. So, anyway, I was also going to, as a follow-up, just asking about the test channels that you're running.
Yes.
There was quite a big variety of different test channels they're running. Is that also just 4K content? There's no HDR content on those channels?
I think that the whole definition of HDR content is still, being shaped as we speak.
We're going to talk about that later. So I'm just queuing that up. So.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll revert. It's basically we're letting we are creating the space for our our clients are mainly TV channels, whether they're free to air, pay TV channels, or pay TV platforms. Like large pay TV platforms like Sky Italian, for instance. We're doing some stuff with them. 3-color TV, which is the largest pay TV platform in Russia, with 12 million consumers and subscribers. So it's basically creating the space for them to start really being able to test from the technical side, but then also start really, once they have content available, making it available to their subscriber base.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, thanks very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you. If I can then introduce our next speaker, who is Ian Troe from Harmonic, who's going to be talking about, in particular, the launch of a case study, NASA TV UHD.
Okay, hello everybody, nice to be here. If you've got any questions, I don't mind taking them from the floor. I've seen these slides before, so I'd rather answer your questions since we're all in this nice cozy room. I like the results. It verifies what I'm actually seeing at home. I've been told that if I buy a 55-inch or greater, I'll be watching it out in my garden shed, not in the living room, because there are sort of definite flavours on things. So. Anyway, as William introduced me, I'm a Senior Director of Emerging Technology and Strategy, 4K, HEVC, HDR, targeted advertising. Those are the kind of things that I'm responsible for. But today we're talking about the collaboration between Harmonic and NASA TV. On first analysis, it might seem strange why we're actually doing a lot of this hosting and taking NASA's content and making it available. And I think a lot of what we were talking about earlier on, it is. The lower one. Did you find that? No, I think that one's, hang on a minute. There we go, you see. I think the lower one, actually. Was that? Oh, thank you. I don't mind being puppeted, actually. It's like I'm at home, isn't it? Anyway, so you might ask where NASA TV actually fits in with the full portfolio. It ranges from anything like the Ultra HD Forum that David Price is a member of. There's a lot of standards work going on at the moment. Satellite providers, we had a particularly interesting interaction before this presentation talking about who are the satellite providers. For the NASA content, there are various license and carriage reasons that mean that it's free in the US, but there are people who are actually contemplating carrying that content here. When you actually look, NASA fully involved throughout the process, but we have a huge range of technology partners who are involved, like Broadcom, set-top box manufacturers, chip manufacturers, and basically a lot of it is to showcase our technology for broadband, satellite applications, showcase HDR technology, showcase streaming, because a lot of this market needs priming, as some of the questions earlier on. Now, what we've got here is we've got a little clip, and I'm sure Alice will give you a quick idea of just what kind of content they've got on this hosted service.
Frequently, once a week, we have a video teleconference where we're able to see each other a little bit more clearly and talk that way. Of course, we have email, and then we send messages back and forth, video greetings and that kind of thing to not only the immediate family but extended family as well as friends.
If anyone wants to, there's reams and reams of NASA footage. You can hunt for sort of the sexy footage of launches and so forth. I do make reference to a clip that we've done as a 7-minute video of some of the material that we've got. And I've got all the links throughout the presentation. But basically, if you were looking in the workflow, you'd be going from the acquisition that's predominantly NASA-based content that they've taken. Harmonic, we actually have a full ingest facility. NASA were involved in the production of it. We do the playout as a hosted playout and then pass it on to NASA, who do the distribution. And there are also a wide range of pay TV operators who are actually involved in it. So what I'll do... Here we go. On the acquisition side, what we've actually got is things really move from the wind-up film cameras that were basically used for the Apollo mission. Things then started to go a little bit technical when we went towards the shuttle, and that was where the critical move from Araflex film cameras made to HD video cameras. And the reason for actually showing this slide is 4K is used extensively for a lot of the NASA footage, but there are a wide range of cameras that they're actually using, from the Red Epic. They also use the Red Dragon. They use the Red Phantom for all of the really 600 frame per second slow-mos of the launches, and those are probably the most impressive ones. You do also see the Sony F55 and F65s used, as well as Panasonic and Asher cameras. Now, there is a real mixed genre of cameras that are actually used, from the 24 frame per second cameras to the 50, 60 frame per second. The slow-mo Red Phantoms are used a lot. We're just doing a shoot of some content out in French Guiana because it's mainly the takeoffs that really appeal. But make no mistake, most of the stuff that comes in for acquisition, we spend a lot of time actually trying to work out what is this content, what format is it, what color grading do we need to do, and so forth. In terms of the ingest, we basically use Final Cut Pro, we use DaVinci. There's a lot of dead pixel removal in 4K content that you've got. We then use Final Cut Pro for actually doing the title and the graphics. It's all fairly Heath Robinson, all of the production equipment that's used, because anyone who's had any experience of 4K production will realize that it looks more like a power station with all of the plumbing, with the quad 3 gig SDIs. The real thing that's going to set video production off in 4K for mainstream television will be 40 gig and 100 gig internet IP connectivity. At the moment, a lot of the episodic or 4K movies are using this, but they're using very, very different workflows. And to the point that was raised before, we actually, hang on a minute, I'll just go back. This has got a mind of its own, this little clicker. But it comes to test us, to see how patient we are, and we mustn't get annoyed. On the ProRes, we had two outputs of it. One was SDR output, and the other is an HDR output. And currently, at the moment, I'm doing a lot of grading for primarily three areas. So I'll press the magic button again, and we'll see what happens. So if we were taking the original ProRes, SDR, and HDR, we've been grading for HLG, which hybrid log gamma. Ostensibly, this is a format that uses a 2020 color container with to try and achieve some level of backwards compatibility with 709. We've also been using HDR Pro. The difference between those two is the HDR10 and hybrid log gamma 1 is used for live applications, the hybrid log gamma predominantly, and the HDR10 is being used a lot for offline assets, although it's very much a mixed bag which of these manufacturers are actually targeting. And I think it's true to say that across all of those three areas, we'll change to my own clicker soon, all of those three areas, the hybrid log gamma, the HDR, and the Dolby, some of them have started off where they've been targeting offline assets, where they've been doing offline grading. But the real thing that you'll be seeing at NAB and IBC is a strong concentration for live production. And in that respect, you really need to start looking at the BBC NHK work and in Dolby. This is a hugely active area, and I've got a couple of references for some papers that I've produced on this. It's too much of a detailed subject to go into now, but if you do want any information, we've produced overviews at SEMTI last year for their centennial conference in Australia. They asked to specifically focus on the HDR aspect of it, and if anyone wants a copy of that paper, I'm quite happy to provide that. So we press the button again. Another thing, the thing that most people are really, really interested in doing is this comparison between SDR, HDR hybrid log gamma, HDR10 and Dolby Vision. That's really what people want to do. Now, I've been to various events and demonstrations where I've got all excited and I thought, God, I'm going to see it. I'm actually going to see the same content across different screens, and I'm going to be able to do a comparison. And there are some phenomenally difficult aspects associated with that, because basically these are emerging technologies, and the one thing that you've got to be careful of doing is doing a direct comparison, even though that's what everyone really wants to see. So that is what you should be hunting for. And the reason why is, at the moment, I only know of 4 screens that are coming out this year that have that full HDR capability. They're quite high-end screen. And the fact of the matter is that even for those early adopters for UHD, as you were alluding to earlier on, they're going to be committed to buying 4K reception solely based on resolution. All of the sexy stuff that we're talking about high dynamic range, higher frame rates and so forth, that doesn't exist yet on those sets. But look around and maybe come and see us at NAB, and you might well see a little indication along those lines for those of you who are lucky to be deported to Las Vegas. So in terms of program review, NASA were involved in it all the way through. And as I said earlier on, we've got a 7-minute video clip that actually talks about how we actually created the content, goes into a little bit more detail and comes up with some facts and figures. And the link is available at the end of this footage. In terms of play out, William and I had a very interesting discussion about what content people were really interested in. And I think, obviously, we'll talk more on the panel afterwards. But basically, for a lot of the applications that we're seeing, it's movies, episodic material, particularly people trying to produce, future-proof their material. For live applications, it's premium sport. And the area that did cause us a bit of debate was any time that people do a refresh on production infrastructure, they're really interested in introducing new techniques. And we had a little debate about ad insertion, because the targeted ad insertion is very much something that people are looking to move away from the spot ad to the more interactive generated material. That in itself brings up a whole issue of ads are predominantly HD at the moment, HD resolution. You don't want to nullify the perception of your product by it dropping to a lower resolution. So in deference to William bringing up this point, this, what's shown in blue as in terms of content ingest, encoding, play out, is very much what's been adopted. I think the one other thing to say in this kind of environment is there was a natural progression for SD to HD, but I don't think UHD is going to follow the same pattern. It might in some respects, and certainly for the big premium broadcasters who've got enormous prestige in having their name associated with it, but make no mistake, this idea of the origin and the streaming and UHD and 4K playout be more analogous to a multi-screen, ABR, multi-profile type environment. That's where we're heading. And you can see early iterations of that coming from Netflix, Sony streaming, and you'll see people building on it from different aspects. So in terms of transmission, he presses that random button and sees what happens. There we go. One of the things that we actually had to do was actually clear some space for NASA, because it consists of SD, HD, and UHD. And roughly speaking, I think the SD channels are around about 2 to 3 meg, the HD around about 6, and the UHD is somewhere between 13 and 15 megabits per second. Again, the whole reason we're doing this is to actually showcase realistic bit rates, because a lot of people have been doing stuff at astronomical bit rates that just aren't viable. So this was squeezed into an already existing service, and the first thing that we had to do to actually get our foot in the door was actually make carriage of the SD and the 2 HDs that they currently have more reasonable. In terms of pay TV operators, another reason for doing this is the hosted channel models. And I'll go back. There we go. I do apologise for this clicker, but we're doing well. We haven't done a Basil faulty with it yet. In terms of the hosted models, I've been designing products for ages, and you design a product, you sell it, straightforward. That model's going out now, and people are basically looking for hosted type services where they can concentrate on the content, and they're looking to either provide the basic infrastructure to operate a broadcast facility from, or outsourcing it completely as a managed service. And that was a lot of the method behind actually going to this approach, to actually sort of drag yourself from the dark ages of equipment manufacturer all the way through to this sort of this hosted scenario. And where we had a difficult discussion before, because NASA is essentially the US, there's some mandate to actually make that content available. But we are in discussion with various operators, both broadband and streaming, and satellite and cable. So we're getting near to the end on this, so don't worry. Yeah, here we go. This will be the most adventurous one for this mouse. In terms of the workflow that we've got, we've got sort of the 3 distribution formats. And as I alluded to before, for NASA, they are involved particularly in the DTH and also the cable and telco, as well as the OTT. And perhaps the last one is the one that's most interesting, which is the OTT streaming one. And that is one where lots of people are actually approaching us, because one of the whole reasons for having content like this is A, to demonstrate equipment quality, and A, to demonstrate the equipment infrastructure. And believe you me, you actually need to have a live service up and available for testing that kind of capability. So it's about UHD as a channel as a service. Yes, it does involve, sort of iron in there in the terms of products. It also involves software in terms of transcoding, origin and packager type services. So it's a blend really of features that you've already seen before. As I mentioned before, for those of you who are having difficulty sleeping, you can snack on the full 52-page complete UHD guidebook. I probably need to revisit that again. We wrote it in conjunction with Dolby. Loads of people have downloaded it. But for the lightweights of you out there, there was a fierce cable one an editor came and said, I fell asleep. Can you produce a shorter version? So, hey, presto, there you go. And as I mentioned before, if you want sort of a 7-minute précis of what all of the NASA coverage is about, it's available from that URL. Thank you very much for listening. Any questions?
That's brilliant, Ian. We didn't interrupt you, but do we have any questions now from the audience? Any questions out there? What's been the viewer reaction? So, have you had feedback, or is that something that?
I think they love it. I mean, you can't lose with NASA TV. I mean, my boss, he's away on this stuff. I mean, every boy wants to be a NASA astronaut and see that kind of content. And I think particularly for the kind of screen technologies, at CES we were doing an enormous amount with LG actually producing content. And the reason why they want us to do it is because it's very engaging content. You can while away hours watching it. And I think the reaction's been very good. And certainly for brand association, for the premium screen manufacturers, they're seeing the immediate pull through to demonstrate the benefit of their products and also keep viewer eyeballs on the content. You can't ask for better content, really.
Right, well, it's quite a coup, and it sounds like advantages all around, so thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I know my 5-year-old, he doesn't get it in 4K, but he is absolutely committed to NASA TV and, of course, wants to be an astronaut now, so it's unbelievable. So now we're moving on to nature, which is often also associated with the sort of advantages of this higher quality, more immersive material. So now we have Joe Parkinson, who's the Managing Director of Blue Sky Entertainment, talking about the launch of their world's largest library of 4K wildlife content and channel.
So, hello everyone. Hello Clicker. Looking forward to this. Then we're going to have some fun. So my name is Jo Parkinson. I'm MD of Blue Sky Entertainment, but really I'm MD of Love Nature International. We are the world's largest producer and distributor of factual 4K content, Ultra HD. And what I wanted to do in this brief session is to give you a quick update as to what we're up to in the world of nature and wildlife, and talk through our journey in the world of stunning UHD production with its highs and lows and challenges. But first, hopefully we're going to show you a quick sizzle reel to show what we're up to. Fingers crossed.
Celebrate the beauty and wonder of nature with Love Nature. 200 plus hours of original and exclusive content, all in stunning 4K. Love Nature is available globally through its exclusive app, compatible with multiple platforms, as well as an SVOD service featuring a huge library of spectacular nature documentaries and 4K slow TV experience. Our engaged social and digital community connects passionate fans around the world. Love Nature spans the globe with official partners like the Jane Goodall Institute UK, Game Rangers International, and Wild is Life Animal Sanctuary, bringing you deeper than anyone else into the heroic conservation work being done on every continent. Love Nature inspires you to discover, explore, and connect with our world. Get closer to nature with Love Nature.
So I guess it's a testament to the nascent nature of the market that I'm not showing you any 4K content today. But the content is in 4K, but obviously the platforms are kind of still working on their ability to support it. Let's see if I can get this thing to work. Okay. So just quickly, who we are. We are a joint venture between Blue Ant Media and Smithsonian Networks. I'll explain who they are in a second. In Canada, we have a 10-year track record in the production and distribution space, but we are actively growing our brands on an international level. What is important to the brand, though, is that there's a real commitment to conservation and telling the stories of nature and the challenges of nature, and that's something is part of our DNA. So we've kind of, the train has left the platform. We've made a commitment to invest in UHD to the tune of $100 million over the next 5 years. We've got a commitment to over 100 hours of global production. A few months ago, that said 300. We've kind of figured out it takes longer than you think. It costs a lot more, and there are lots of challenges, but we still think that's a real scale operation for the brand. Here we go. There you go. So quickly, Blue Ant, targeting international distribution. We are very much focused on 4K content. Blue Ant was probably one of the foremost distributors of channels in HD a few years ago, so now they've moved into the UHD space to future-proof the business. Smithsonian. Hopefully some of you heard of the Smithsonian Institute, but it's the world's largest museum and research organization. Great brand recognition, big audience, and they are our partner in the US, so we have a long-term relationship with Smithsonian to take all of our UHD content and deliver that to nature lovers in the States via their Smithsonian Earth app. So what do we do? We produce stunning 4K content. Our business model really depends on where the market is in terms of the rollout of 4K. In certain markets, we're prioritizing program sales because that seems to be where we're getting the most traction. Particularly in Asia, we're looking at launching 4K channels. And we, hello. I didn't press anything, I swear. And then a couple of weeks ago, hence why I'm looking so tired, we launched our SVOD, direct-to-consumer service, in 33 territories. But very early days, I don't even have any reports back, so we'll be seeing that as work in progress. So a little bit of why we're different. It's all about the animals. We're not presenter-driven. It's about telling their stories in an educational and entertaining way. It's all brand new, exclusive content. We are a community, not just TV. I'll talk about that in a moment. And we've got a lot of content that's never been in the market before. And we're getting great traction at the various markets from a program sales perspective, but also from platforms that can support UHD. They're really keen to get in this space, so we're going to carry on producing. So what are we doing? We've got there's over 40 crews right now across the globe filming in Ultra HD. It's an incredibly exciting time. We've been learning since the end of 2014 how to do this. And we've come across challenges in terms of file size, the exponential time and cost of the processing, even from things like the cameras are heavier. You have to think about that when you're on location. So one of the production projects we have on the go is something I want to just show you a quick clip about. Basically, oops, I'll let that go back. We have a groundbreaking project in Zambia, which is basically a completely different business model and something that hasn't been done before. And we're basically put a team on the ground for 2 years. It's a crew of about 50. And they're filming the animals and wildlife and telling their story 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, through the seasons. I don't know if any of you remember a TV show that was called 7 Up. It showed kids growing up year on year. We're basically the 7-Up of the animal kingdom. But obviously animals grow quicker, so we can compress it. So I'll show you a little clip. Again, this would be great if it were in 4K, but I think you'll get an idea of what we're doing. If you could show the clip, thank you. It's amazing footage of that leopard, huh? So, I mean, I recently worked at WWE, so you could say I've moved from the human gorillas to the animal gorillas. But I'm quite used to being in a room with kids, enthralled to meet their superstars and heroes, and very excited. And I was on a video conference call with the team here a couple of weeks ago. That was the definition of excited about that project. We've also got a Celex camera out there, which is capturing never-before-seen behaviour, so we're really excited. So, moving on, 2 weeks ago we launched our SVOD service. So it's currently in 33 countries, including the US, under the brand of Smithsonian Earth in the US. Exclusive 4K content, very regular refreshment to keep people interested. We have a built-in charitable donation, which is important to us because we want this to be about giving back and conservation. So we're on multiple platforms, so Amazon Fire, Apple, etc. And we'll be rolling out on other platforms as we bed those deployments down. Just a little bit on community. It is important to us. We use the more interactive platforms like our website and Facebook, etc., to be able to create a community of nature lovers and to be able to let them get involved in this story. And it's got a couple of words on the fact we're working with Jane Goodall Institute in the UK. Jane, if you're not aware, is the very famous naturalist who discovered that chimps use tools. And also with game rangers in Zambia and Wildest Life in Zimbabwe. And that we feel it's important not just to tell the story, but to help go out there and continue to tell the story and allow people to get involved in protecting nature. So that's me. Great to be here. I'm very happy to answer any questions.
That looked absolutely stunning in VGA. I can only imagine what it looks like in UHD, so thanks very much for bringing it along. Do we have any questions now? I'm sure you can have a chat with anyone afterwards and they're interested in particularly licensing your content, I'm sure.
Always happy to have that conversation.
Absolutely. We do have a question there. If we could get the microphone, if you could just let us know who you are.
Martin Prince from TNO. I'm curious, can you tell us something about the usage, how many subscribers you have, or about how much people want to watch this? Because you have, I think, the biggest collection of 4K content. Yeah. What do you see from the consumer side?
Well, I'll answer that in a kind of indirect way, in the sense that we've just started. We're very new. We are a startup in essence. From a program sales perspective, we've had a hugely positive response. There's a great appetite for Ultra HD, and we only really started at MIPCOM in October, and so that's just going great guns. From a consumer perspective, we got out there early started producing this content based on a gut feel that consumers would love it. We did research, but you don't really know how it's going to be responded to until you get out there. So with it on the SWOT service only went live 2 weeks ago. We've been contacting those early adopters and trying to get some qualitative feedback, and generally the feedback's been phenomenal. So that's great, but until I get my reports from Apple and Roku and Amazon, etc., it's very early. But I think the way we're approaching this is when the hard work starts. This is when we'll start doing the testing about, A/B testing, what acquisition strategies work, what don't, what content is proving the most popular, where we need to kind of course correct. But the balance of those sort of stunning documentaries, but also the kind of slower nature scenes, is something we feel is a good place to start. But we've got a lot to learn, and it's going to be a busy next few months.
Okay. Thank you.
Great stuff. Thanks very much. Well, if we can move on now to our panel. Thanks very much, Joe. If I can ask you to take the stage. Just while we're doing that, actually, I've got a bit of show and tell. If anybody's any doubt as to why we might need 4K or UHD or something better, maybe people think that HD is fine and that's going to be adequate. If I can just show you this. This is an HD television picture. The reason it's so small is it's 300 dpi. It's been printed in the way that you would print a magazine. So actually, HD TV is only 2 megapixels. Most of you have probably got phones that considerably exceed that. And 2 megapixels these days isn't very much. And even then, it's not 2 megapixels because it's interlaced and we throw away half the color information. So most of the pictures that we have become used to as high-quality television, in consumer electronics terms, actually aren't that good anymore. So what does 4K look like? Well, it's 4 times bigger, so it looks like this at 300 dpi. So when we're talking about 50-inch screens and the idea that you have to have a 50-inch screen to appreciate the benefits of 4K, I would question that. I think actually we should be thinking more in terms of the 300 dpi type image, which is about the resolution of an iPhone. And so that screen is basically a small computer monitor. So what would 8K look like? Well, it would be 4 times bigger. So that's an 8K image. So I think the argument that I'm making is that we shouldn't think this is all some way off into the future and that we all need to move into the garden shed to watch 50-inch screen. In fact, I think what's going to happen is that screen technology is pretty much already here. What is an issue is the distribution and the content production, which is certainly still a challenge for those of us that have some experience in that. But interestingly, this camera, this is a picture that I took with my camera, which is a 50 megapixel camera. So this is actually a crop from a still image. So just to give you some indication of where things might be going, my impression is that we'll probably get there rather sooner than some people might expect. This year we've got the Olympics, which is normally a year in which we try new things out in the television world. And we will see some footage in both 4K and 8K, but we won't probably be seeing it in our homes, unfortunately. So the question is, what we'll be doing in 2020, which is not that far off, and how many screens will we then have in 4K, and will we indeed have 8K? So that's the sort of context that I'd like to frame, that this isn't something that we can postpone into some time into the future. This is real soon now. And we've got a very august panel here with a lot of experience about the technical side in particular of this. But I'd also like to talk about, as we started off, with the consumer dimension, what does the viewer want out of this experience, and some of the business background as well, how we're going to deliver that in terms of the value chain that we've talked about, and where is it going to lead from. But perhaps I could start off by asking you, Ian, we heard from you, but if the others could also introduce themselves. But if you could perhaps each answer the question of what do you define as immersive television?
Oh, that's a very good question. Very much dependent upon the content. Some people would regard it as virtual reality. Some people would regard it as sort of a gaming type environment. Me personally, I'd regard immersive and look to things to totally fill your peripheral vision And that's what is an immersive experience. I think that's what cinema strives for, with the very select positioning of the viewer to the screen, at least if you're in the comfy premium seats. But that is what I look to. But there are some people who have quite strict definitions of it, and are verging towards associating immersive with 3D or virtual reality. But I take a far looser view of it and look to it to sort of mean any of the kind of screen technologies.
Okay. David, what does it mean to you? And perhaps you could explain where you come from as well.
Yes, I'm with Ericsson, and Ericsson has, as you know, got quite a large range of services and solutions, and we actually operate a lot of TV stations around, as well as having our own technology. But I won't go into that now, but come up and see us. We're up there, and if you want some more explanation of Ericsson and media. But visceral is the word I think of when I talk about, when I hear about immersive. And the reason I don't think immersive is good enough is because it's not about just the visual experience. It is also about forgetting where you are, who you are, and having a very emotional reaction to what you're perceiving. That to me is what we're trying to achieve with both audio and video, and who knows what's next. But that's certainly, I think, the goal, and that's certainly the goal of the directors and all the people who are in the creative element. They want to take you away, whether it be to that island, the magical island in the Life of Pi, or to the plane in Pearl Harbor, whatever it is. They want their whole drive is to take you away from your present consciousness and move you into a pseudo reality.
Steve.
Yeah, Steve Christian from Verimatrix. I was a little bit surprised at immersive TV coming out on a panel where we were just talking about 4K resolution. So it seems that you have to go a lot further than just increasing resolution to get to something that's immersive. And I would agree with the notion that cinema, is really the probably most immersive immersive environment we have right now, because that combines multi-channel audio and the darkness, even though it's not really HDR, I don't think yet, but it's a very, a large screen format, covers a large amount of your vision, and you really are, captivated, I guess. There's no other kind of distractions in something like the cinema environment. Actually, the most recent and most intriguing experience I had was on the LG booth at this year's CES. You walk into it was probably a room about this size, Ian, I'm sure you knew about it, and there was screens on probably 270 degrees, I would say, and all up on the ceiling as well, and you could stand in the middle of this thing and just be completely, totally mesmerized, actually, I think would be the right term. Visceral reaction, that's David. So that was. If you could have one of those in your home, then that would be immersive TV, I think.
You have to have a very dark home, though.
You have to have a very dark home, yeah. And a lot of friends, like the one on the booth. It was pretty crowded, so yeah, it was good.
Sten, if you could introduce yourself and let me know what your view of immersive television is.
My name is Sten Levitz. I work for a Danish cable operator called TDC. We're also a telco, we're a quad play operator. But my specific interest in this is that I have the responsibility for the architecture of our distribution platform, specifically the set-top boxes that we're using. And right now we're looking at the next generation. We are now launching an HD set-top box, and we're now having the increased call for a UHD set-top box, because even though we find that there's very little content that we can successfully sell to our customers, we still have to start working on the format now, otherwise we're not going to be ready, is the general trend. And to me, the immersive side of things is, well, it's many different things, but I think I will agree with these gentlemen that it is very much about the picture that is so good that you actually forget you're looking at a TV. My kids would tell you that immersive is something when there's something very interesting going on a TV screen, regardless of the resolution. That's at least my experience. But I think for us, it would be offering a premium service, which is the picture quality and audio quality, which is so good that you forget you're actually watching something on a TV and not actually being there.
So we can drill down into that. What are some of the dimensions, if you like, of that experience? There's obviously the screen dimension, there's physical size, there's pixel resolution, there's frame rate, there's the color issue. We've talked about high dynamic range. Is it all of these things? Which of those things are the sort of necessary, essential characteristics? And where are we with those?
I'll go first. Okay. Well, I didn't introduce myself. Ian Trow from Harmonic, since we're supposed to.
We heard you earlier.
But I liked your introduction where you were saying by 2020, looking into the future. And I'd actually speculate that most viewers will have gone out and bought an Ultra HD screen. You know, and I would say that the challenge for us is really whether the content and the distribution is there. Now, we had some interesting comments. You know, everyone latches onto the latest buzzwords, but the industry is really catching up and predominantly selling 4K and UHD on resolution. People are aware of high dynamic range, and I like the comment that you were talking about whether cinema is actually high dynamic range, because that in itself is a debatable point, because a lot of it, you know, sort of with ambient light levels, colorimetry, we could probably spend a whole panel session actually debating that.
Just you on your own, right?
But I think the one point that seems to come across now is that resolution is not enough to pull viewers away from existing HD services, and I think a lot of people are trying to search and find that solid remit for making a transition from a broadcaster perspective from HD to UHD. Within the consumers, they're already there. They know they're going to go out and buy a screen that's UHD and 4K capable. They're going to have content that's well tuned to that screen. Movie content, 24 frames per second, really plays to the strengths of what's available now. The challenge for us within the industry is to make things like premium sports actually work, because they're the real juggernaut behind television. And I think the screens will be there. It's how we lead consumers on through the evolution of those screens and actually provide those services to back it up with content and the distribution mechanisms. Those are the key issues.
Yeah, and it's almost, to be honest, we put the spotlight on the wrong thing. The resolution, especially if you're talking about 55 inches and below, as far as screen size, giving the average viewing distance is 2.1 meters, you're going to get far bigger impression on the viewing experience by having the high dynamic range and immersive audio than you are by increasing the number of pixels. Your eyes simply can't determine that at a screen size that small at that viewing distance. Simply, that's just the way that the fovea works. Anyway, so I think this whole thing of Ultra HD is going to be confused for a little while, and people are almost wrongly interchanging 4K, UHD, etc. We've got some definitions now. Finally, we've got the UHD Alliance coming out, as they did at CES, saying, okay, this is what it means with Ultra HD Premium. That's what they've done. They've got two different types of badges that goes on TV sets, whether they're capable of 0.005 up to 540 nits, which is how bright things get, or whether it's from 0.05 up to 1,000 nits, which the reason they've got two is because one is very suitable for OLED technology, the other one's very suitable for LED LCD technology. They both produce the same experience, but if you're going to go with the former, make sure that you have a nice dark room, like we were talking about at CES. If you go with the latter, then you can have maybe some cracks in the blinds or see-through curtains. So that's what it comes down to, simple things like that. What is your viewing environment? What's your viewing distance? And I think the industry is homing towards a solution that's going to make the wow factor, which is going to come in, this year and next year and all the way through 2020 and beyond.
And to link the into the business dimension of this, right? It's that wow factor that you really need to sell a premium service. And I'm totally on the same page as David here in terms of the I think con that was played in marketing 4K resolution as UHD, because it doesn't have that wow factor. Even though Eutelsat's research seemed to indicate that, I mean, in most cases it's a bit of a dud actually in lots of ways, and you need HDR and audio and sometimes enhanced frame rate as well to really make a truly spectacular, truly premium difference above the kind of HD world.
So
But, you know,
where's the
and-
consumer research that says that what consumers really want is HDR, if they even knew what that meant?
Is there a consumer research? Well, I mean, David can reference the physics of the angles subtended by various pixels, right? That's what you're referring
it's
to,
actually
right?
cotangent. I didn't realize I would ever use that again, but I did. Cotangent.
I'll have to look at my A-level notes.
Yeah, but we do, Ericsson, I think, is famous for its Consumer Labs report we were talking about earlier on. And the number 2 factor is what the consumer considers to be called quality. What does that mean? I mean, is it better pixels, more pixels, whatever, or faster pixels? They don't know, but they just know that it's a good thing to, and they will actually promote. And you look at the promoter scores, it's when you put those kind of factors in, you see the promoter scores go way up to the far end. So, by the way, look out for the Ericsson Consumer Lab report. It's actually online and free.
But I think there's an added dimension to this, of grabbing the mic here. That is that we can see that perhaps having, if you go and see HDR, compare it to what you get with the resolution, to me it is, the wow factor, it's more eye candy-like, it just looks better. The thing as a network operator is that we have to consider also weighing out bandwidth issues versus how much bang for the buck we get.
Yeah.
And I think that for putting HD in HDR,
Yes.
you get more bang for the buck than putting just 4K resolution and no HDR. And that means that we can stream more television channels either over DVB or IP. It doesn't matter.
Note this is not a technology necessarily an argument, it's an economics argument, right? So it does sort of come to the business dimensions of trying to provide the next generation of premium service. So,
But ultimately, you've got to convince a consumer to buy a new telly, and are they going to buy a telly that's like bigger and got better resolution that in the shop they can see the difference?
They're going to get 4K,
or that it's got some
they're going to get 3D, whether they like it or not.
Well, exactly, they're going to get it in any case, yeah.
Well, I think the HDR point that you were saying, where's the user proof for that?
Yeah.
If you went to the EBU Production Technology Seminar, the BBC hosted an excellent demonstration where it was basically trying to get expert viewers to match a scene, a reference scene, and they actually had adjustment of the controls to actually balance that out, to actually see the combination of dynamic range and ambient light levels. And that came up with some very interesting issues. I think that what you will be seeing is bridging the gap that we've currently got, and I think the earlier report alluded to this, where you're seeing a lot of manufacturers trying to tie up screen technologies with services in very subtle ways. And at the moment, what the broadcasters are facing now is that either they go with the basic 4K resolution-only prospect, or they start to become prescriptive about specific screen technologies with the services, and that was very clearly identified within there. But on the HDR issue, the whole issue about your ambient environment, you can expect to see screens coming out that will have a sensor for adjusting the screen dynamics. And that was one of the key things that came out about CES, that a huge amount of color grading, particularly the colour grading that's gone on in the film industry, has been Heath Robinson, and there's a black art to it that can't be mimicked in a live television environment for various reasons about metadata, processing, and so forth. And what we've now got to move into is to break down this association with specific screen technologies to actually make it more generic so that we can have wholesale production, because that's a real barrier at the moment. To its introduction. So I think with HDR, it does bring about significant advantages, but also, we've got to do the due diligence, technically within the business to actually be able to deliver that. And certain broadcasters are attacking that, but it's not straightforward, and it gets more and more difficult as you've got legacy screens in the marketplace.
So let's throw colour into the mix then. So, that's always the other aspect of the better pixels, is wider colour gamut, which is clearly something that consumers are screaming for. To what extent is that also part of this combination? And, do you think that in the average viewing environment, people can really tell the difference?
I think the wider colour gamut is a nice thing to have. It adds to the flavour. The thing that really counts is the 10-bit, because certainly when you get larger screens, which are maybe not so much in Europe, but and certainly in North America, larger screens you're going to see with 8-bit, you're going to see some horrible kind of posterization. So you definitely need 10-bit. You definitely need. So if I had like a list of the things, I'd take HDR first, I'd take 10-bit second, and I'd way down the list. I'd definitely have the augmented audio. I'd have that. Certain applications, especially with larger screen size, I'd take a higher frame rate, and then finally I'll take maybe 4K. And that's the kind of sequence of things. It'll be an interesting survey actually to see how people really see the prioritization of that.
Oh, we'd love to do one for you.
Yeah, exactly.
So can I pick up on high frame rate, because I'm just trying to sort of cover the gamut. So high frame rate is one other dimension that's often talked about. In some ways it's more challenging because it's more data. Some of the other stuff we can kind of squeeze in. How important do you think higher frame rate would be? It was quite low down on your list, but for something like sport, I would imagine it's quite high.
Yeah, for sport, it definitely is high. And I think there's going to become a variable frame rate element somewhere. It's not even on the books yet, but there's only certain parts where you really need the high frame rate to cope the fast action. And then you go back to the talking head back in the studio, and it's a complete waste of bandwidth that you're concerned about. So yeah, I think that definitely that's in the mix. And I think that when it comes to cinematic content, we've recently announced a partnership with Fox, and in talking with them, this topic came up, and they said, you know what, it was really, well, I don't know which Hobbit it was, but apparently it was
48.
Yeah, it was done, and everybody hated it. Everybody realized that was a bad mistake, so they want to avoid that kind of mistake again. So it's going to be horses for courses, they say in England, and I think variable frame rate is the way to go eventually.
Although I heard of a movie that is now being made at 120 frames a second, so that kind of goes against that argument.
But I think the thing is that you've always got to pair any expectations back to what will sell to the user. And at the moment, the kind of margins that the screen operators or screen manufacturers are offering, I think, in the last 20 years, there have been a precious few years where they've actually been profitable. So you've got to temper that it's an enormously difficult market, and there are even been examples of premium electronics manufacturers who produce certain kind of white labeled goods who haven't entered that market because they can't get the kind of price differential. Now, I think that's coming because if you look at next generation of HDMI, it's got that capability to support the higher frame rates that David's talking about, the variable compression. These things are coming, and they're for the benefit of the industry because they do allow you to sort of upsell a better experience. But it's always this careful balancing act that consumers have been weaned onto very, very low prices for quite high functionality screens that makes it difficult for the screen manufacturers to put a lot of new technology into those screens with the margins being so tight.
Real quick anecdote on that conversation at Fox. They said at the high frame rate, it looked like dudes in costumes. That's what they said. In other words, it was totally non-immersive. You actually thought you were at the studio looking at someone making a movie rather than being in the movie. So I have to watch out for those high frame rates. It can cause that effect.
And the one thing that you do have to say is that with a lot of the services, we're making the change from interlace to progressive. Finally, the business is actually dumping progressive, dumping interlace, and the move to progressive rationalizes a lot of the workflows. People think about it, complicating it, but with so many workflow steps in taking an asset through, that actually being able to push interlace, it's always going to feature in there, but to move some more of the acquisition as progressive does help program interchange.
And in terms of production and acquisition, do you think that people, for library reasons, will be moving to this before there is actually a distribution channel to deliver it?
They've already moved now. They're future-proofing assets. There are two different markets happening. The distribution market is a complete distraction because most people who are doing high-value episodic or film material are producing in 4K in the expectation that the distribution will come.
What is interesting, though, that the production of 4K has to be very different to the production of 1080p. We found that people, when they certainly look at large screens, instead of actually taking the whole of the picture in, because there's so much detail now in the background, they are scanning. You do studies where their pupil is, and it's actually moving saccadically all across the screen. and so it means you can't have fast pans and scans. Your number of edits per minute has to be lower, etc., etc. So producers have to take note of this movement.
And that was also said when we brought in HD, it was a similar sort of argument. But it seems to have normalised since then because of sort of dual production. I mean, is it just that we need to learn the craft again in some way?
Yeah, we do. And, it's going to get, there's going to be more as we get into full HDR kind of production. It's going to be learnt again. So it's something that we will adjust to, but it's everybody who's on the production side needs to watch out.
I mean, that comes up deliberately in sports, where, for premium sports, you typically have 7, 8, 9 cameras telling the story. And one of the problems that's been with some of the trials is that they've used 3 or 4 locked off cameras that admittedly can pan and scan down to HD resolution. But there has been a lot of kickback where people have actually said, this isn't the same as
It's not as immersive.
It's not as immersive because basically they're very used to vision mixed material that's heavily governed by a producer who is telling the story through 7 or 8 camera angles.
Yeah. Or 27 or more. Steve, in terms of the sort of copyright implications of this, we're giving people very high quality master if we're not careful. What are the issues there? And then what are the constraints that might be imposed on this because of that?
Yeah, good area to probe into. It touches on this notion that you're providing or trying to provide a premium service and attract more money from a given subscriber in a given service delivery kind of environment. And because of that higher premium value and the higher quality of the content, there's a greater threat to that content from various forms of piracy, particularly from what we tend to call the redistribution threat, which is taking a big, nice picture on a big screen and just doing something like camcordering that, and ending up with a pretty good high quality secondary signal, which you can then repurpose, sell, whatever, on a pirate basis. Now, what Movie Labs came up with a couple of years ago was a set of new content requirements for distribution of UHD content, along with the specifications of what UHD actually meant. They also came up with a sort of a set of recommendations on new security measures which would protect these new premium service flows and the revenue associated with them. And one of those was the inclusion of forensic watermarking, specifically to counter this kind of redistribution threat, to understand where copies were being made, from what sources they were being made, the kind of attacks that were being made, and be able to trace back those attacks to the source of the original content and potentially shut them down. So these are new implications of the UHD business, which involve new security functions and the inclusion of watermarking. So that's part of the whole sort of story about launching this, not just as a technology but as a commercial service.
And that's actually something that has a rather big impact for what we're doing right now, as we use Verimatrix, as you know. But it's not just a matter of, as the commercial guys say, and it needs to do 4K. Yes, but that implies that we have to have a better understanding of the whole signal path through distribution, through the set-top box, onto the TV, making sure that we live up to, say, the Movie Lab specs, right, or whatever specs. But I think it also has an impact on the whole negotiation process to get the commercials right between the content owners and the network operators, to figuring out when do we match these criteria.
Yeah.
And how can we document that we match them so that we don't break something or make it too expensive.
We're here to help.
I think, as ever, within the broadcast industry, what these two gentlemen have talked about predicates anything that we've talked about. We've talked about all of the HDR, and screen and services. But fundamentally, if an asset gets compromised, that destroys the value base. So I think that a lot of what Movie Labs were doing in terms of HDCP, in terms of frustrating hackers using the same methodology for breaking up transmission bouquets, in terms of watermarking. But one of the key things is technology will only take you so far, and there are countless cases where lawyers are swamped with cease and desist orders for illegal redistribution of content. And I think it's a careful mix between commercial and technical to actually tackle this hacking and piracy that we've got.
And I'd have to say one thing, I think, is there's an entity called the Ultra HD Forum, and that is a complement to the UHD Alliance. We work very closely together. We have a focus end-to-end. They have a focus on certifying content and the display. So we focus on everything in between. That Ultra HD Forum is kicking off a security working group, which I hope you're going to be part of.
I wrote the
Good
brief.
man, good man. And also, for those people who are going to NAB, there is a masterclass again, just like there was at IBC. There's going to be another masterclass with an update to the workings of the Ultra HD Forum. It's free to anyone with a show badge. You don't have to be a conference pass or anything like that. And I think you found it quite useful, the one in IBC. And this is going to be an update from that. And in that, we're going to be presenting them some information on best working practices that really wrap everything up we've discussed into that.
The practical implementations of UHD services, yeah.
Okay, thanks very much. We started late. I'm trying to get us back on track, so I think we'll leave it there. If you do have any questions, then perhaps you can talk to these gentlemen afterwards. Please join me in thanking our panel.